This is a video in response to comments made on the Call Me By Your Name review. There are scenes that I find unnerving in movies and in TV that honestly probably don't bother a lot of people. And the funny thing is, I love Friday the 13th, I love Nightmare on Elm Street, I love most zombie movies. And I really enjoy Rick and Morty and a lot of Archer and a lot of that kind of stuff. And yet there's stuff that I don't like. So here's a top 10 list, and I'm going to be honest about these 10 things, and I'm going to go in order with things that either make me not want to watch something, turn away, or angry. There are differences between these things, and some of these are things that I sometimes I see it and I'm like that's not necessary. Number 10. I'm just gonna put the word teeth up here. Any movie where you see somebody get their teeth knocked out, and I'm not talking about like a guy getting punched in the head and he spits out a tooth. That's not a big deal. That's what happens in wrestling a lot. You see a guy get punched and spit a tooth in the air, and it happens. I'm talking like American History X. Put your mouth on the curb. It's curb stomp. There's a scene in Human Centipede 2 where he takes a hammer and hammers out the guy's teeth, and I almost threw up. It's one of those things that just I can't handle it, and I fully admit I can't handle it. Number 9. What's bad comedy? Bad comedy is just it's cringy. It's those it's and it's hard to explain. It's sort of like the newer Adam Sandler movies where they're really not funny, and they keep trying the same tired joke, or they'll make a bunch of just stupid random category like some Family Guy episodes do this too, and I've really enjoyed some Family Guy stuff, but some of it's just an American Dad I can't. And bad comedy for me is just unwatchable. A bad drama you might be able to get into, and if it's like Tommy Wiseau and it's bad, it's still watchable. But for me, bad comedy is still pretty bad. Um, Put this on number 8. And this happens in almost every horror movie. But when a movie relies just on jump scares, I'm done with it. And there's a lot of movies out now, especially these PG-13. We want teenagers to be able to see the movies. Jump scares are not, they're not my thing. And it's funny because there have been times where I've seen reviews online where it's user reviews. It's like, great movie, tons of jump scares. And I go, thanks for the warning. And I don't watch it. And it's like this. It's these movies that are boring, boring, boring. And then something jumps at the screen. And then you're bored and you jumps at the screen. And it's not scary. Scary is not jumps at the screen. Scary is when Jason Voorhees is slowly tracking somebody and they're running up the stairs instead out the front door. And you're like, what are you doing? If you care about the person in Friday the 13th movies, normally you're cheering for Jason. That's the trick. Very often you're cheering for Jason. Just put that person out of their misery. Number 7. So I've got 10 here, and I'm trying to figure out in what order I get discomforted. Um, Propaganda. So if it's a TV show or a movie or something that has a message that seems very highly slanted, and I don't agree with it, and I feel like it's really pushing this narrative that's um, there are religious movies that do that where they'll make scientific claims, or well, you can't trust this part of science, and my brain goes, wait, what's going on over here? Yeah, just stop. And very often those movies or TV shows don't last on my television because I won't tolerate it. Just me. Number 6, and I'm gonna have um, to be clear about this, because this is something I don't talk about this having a hockey channel, and I don't talk about it on here because we don't really discuss this stuff. But any, I'm not comfortable. I don't like it. Yeah, I mean, I've watched the odd adult film because people do that, but yeah, for the most part, the hardcore, I don't. No thanks. And it doesn't matter. Hetero, gay, doesn't matter. Um, I mean, if it's two girls hanging out, finding out what's what, I'm probably more agreeable to that than anything else. And that's also a guy thing. I know that's rooted in being guys, and I've often talked to different guys about it, like what is it about that we just and I think the funniest thing I ever heard was a stand-up comedian about the subject said she didn't understand why men really enjoyed watching lesbians because it should scare them. This means that women have figured out a way to cut men out of the picture entirely and just enjoy themselves without them, which is a funny topic, and yet there it is. So related to the movie that we reviewed tonight, that's the truth. And it's not just what you see. It can be what you hear. It can be the insinuation of something that happened where you go, oh, no. And it happens in movies, and very often it's something that, and I mean, it doesn't occur to me right now what other movies, but I know it's happened in movies where I'll see something and I go, oh, that's kind of icky, ain't it? That's not good. They're all going to need showers. I need a shower now. Number 5. I don't have a problem with needles, but any movies that show heroin use, it's not. I don't. It's not for me. And it's funny because one of my favorite movies is Requiem for a Dream. Requiem is a movie that I really, really, truly enjoy, even though it's not accurate. So there is some of this in it too. There's definitely propaganda to Requiem for a Dream. The way that drug use is portrayed in the movie is not accurate, but it's got this narrative. It's a very good movie. It's well acted. It's got a terrifying conclusion, and I enjoy it for the most part. At 4, now we're getting into the really, really yucky stuff that I don't like, and I'm trying to figure out which of these 4 is least likely to make me go and done. I guess I'll go with this one, but it's close. You know what's funny? I watch horror movies, and you can watch 15, 20, 30, 40 teenagers get killed. As soon as the dog bites it, you're like, whoa, movie. A dog? That dog was an innocent character in this movie. How? A dog? Oh. And a cat? Oh, no. No. There's a scene in Orphan Black where one of the male clones is threatening a cat. And it is one of the most horrible scenes in the show. And he doesn't hurt the cat. And yet, in that same episode, people die and whatever. But the cat, don't you touch the kitty. Number 3, this is tough to put in 3, but I'm going to put it in 3, and I'm going to be honest with you. People ask about the Saw movies a lot. I liked Saw 2 and Saw 3, but honestly, I much prefer horror movies where the kills are quick. Quick, one shot. And when you really watch it, you go, that wouldn't kill somebody. Not right away. Especially in Friday the 13th. There's very often scenes where you think, they wouldn't die from that. Not right away. Eventually, yes, but not in 2 seconds. But these movies that feature some of the stuff that's in the Saw movies, Hostel is another one. Just after I watch a movie like that, I just feel really icky, and it leaves this feeling in my brain that I can't get rid of for a while. There have been times where I've watched a movie like that, like Hills Have Eyes. Somebody asked on the live stream for Death Truck if you watched Hills Have Eyes, the one from, I think it was 2008. I felt depressed after watching Hills Have Eyes. I didn't feel scared. I just felt depressed. It is a very downer movie. And that's why I never watched the second one, and I will never watch that movie again. And Last House on the Left, I watched the original from 1972. It made me feel sick. So when the remake came out, I didn't watch it. And when friends of mine went to see it, after I said, don't go and see that, you're going to be upset. And then I see them at work, and I said, well, what'd you think? And they're like, oh, that really upset me. And I'm like, Yeah, I told you. I don't like it. It's not at all my cup of tea. And it's weird because I love Friday the 13th movies. I laugh all the way through them. I enjoy Halloween movies for the most part. And I enjoy a lot of slasher films. But once you get into the Saw and the Hostels and even some Tarantino stuff, it gets pretty dark. Pretty dark. Number two, and this is tough because one and two are really in that same category, and yet they're different. Um, any kind of violence against women, and I'm all for equality and I'm all for equal rights and everything, and equal. I've heard the phrase equal rights, equal fights, and whatever. Guys want to say that, go for it. But when a movie's got a woman being slapped around, I really don't like it. And then there's movies that have made me physically ill. A good example is, of course, the well-respected and beloved movie Boys Don't Cry. And I enjoyed Boys Don't Cry as a movie the one time I watched it. Hilary Swank, where she plays a female character dressing like a man, passing as a man, in a relationship with a woman, and then there's a very troubling end to that movie. And it made me sick. Because it's a true story. And that's the other part of this too, is when any of these involve true stories, it makes it more difficult. I guess six, whatever, but the rest of them, it makes it tough. It does. True stories, although they say Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on a true story, and that's as loosely based on a true story as you can get. It's not a true story. It's just not. It just isn't. Which leaves number one, and again, really, number one kind of goes without saying, and I know there are plenty of movies that have this, and I mean that in all of its forms. Um, I've I've always had a strong connection with kids, and I've always been, and parts one, two, and three are all kind of connected. Um, when you feature in a movie, a television show, whatever it is, the meekest among us getting bullied by people who are pretending to be strong, and you have characters who are really helpless, just getting pushed around and going through these awful, horrible things. And what makes it worse is when a movie does this or a TV show does this, and then there's no comeuppance. There's no payoff. And it's just sort of, well, that happened. There you go. We're moving on. And it does. And then where it's also jarring is when you're looking at movies from, say, 60, 70 years ago, and you see how our sensibilities have changed. Just tonight, Yvonne and I were watching the end of Singing in the Rain. And there's a scene towards the end where the one blonde character, I'm not sure the actress that played the role, but the men keep grabbing her by the arm and pulling her and pulling her and pulling her. And she said, the audience can see that. And I said, but back then nobody thought anything of grabbing a woman and yanking on her. And if that was in a movie now, and this is a comedy musical, PG rated, yeah, people would be like, wait, that's not. So these things do change. They do over time. And stuff that may not have upset us 30 years ago may upset us now. I didn't put anything on here about race because usually when there's something in a movie that has that, and I'm thinking of Gran Torino, starring Clint Eastwood. Usually there's a payoff where something goes well. Everybody always brings up All in the Family, and I'm not sure why, because Archie Bunker was a buffoon. He was an ass. And at no point in the show did they ever lift him up and go, Archie's how you should act. Absolutely not. So usually whenever that's in there, it may make you feel uncomfortable at the time, but it's normally in the construct of something that shows you how it's incorrect. So there you go. The 10 things that are most likely to make me say either turn that off or let me know when that's over. And yeah, it's a weird thing. I can watch a bunch of Friday the 13th Halloween movies and all this stuff, and it doesn't bother me. And yet, you know, some of these movies, I can't get through them. I may get 20, 30 minutes in and say, I'm done. I'm really done. I'm not doing that. That's not in my realm. And it's funny because I know people take that personally. You know, Game of Thrones is the one that gets thrown at me all the time. Like, oh, you should watch Game of Thrones. I'm like, I don't like Game of Thrones. And the reaction is, yes, you do. You just don't know that you do yet. Nobody comes into my house and says, do you eat Brussels sprouts? And I say, I don't like Brussels sprouts. Yes, you do. You should eat them. They're good for you. Nobody tries to make you buy a car that they think is good. Like, why aren't you buying a Miata? I don't want a Miata. Yes, you do. But if it's a TV show or a movie, people will try to convince you that you should enjoy it because they enjoy it. And it's the only part of life where I think that really happens. For instance, I don't swim. I'm not a fan of water. I stay out of water. I have showers. People always ask, "Oh, do you shower?" No, I've never had a shower. I smell like a bottle of socks. Like, um, but I'm hydrophobic. So but it's reasonable. I've walked through rivers and stuff, and it's whatever. But I don't swim. I've always had that, and the mentality has always been one of that, like, well, they can fix it, and nobody can fix it. There was a girl I went to school with, beautiful girl, takes me out to a pool. I'd had a crush on her for years. We're in a pool, both in bathing suits, and if I was ever gonna man up and be all strong in the water, like, yeah, I can do this, it would have been with her. And after half an hour in the water with me, my all-encompassing fear that causes all your muscles to tense up, which means you're not going to float. And my brain knows that, goes, you're not going to float. She took me out for lunch. She gave up and took me out for lunch and never suggested it again. And that's just one of those things. There are certain phobias. I don't like insects, but I love spiders. So if there's a spider in the house, I'm the one that has to take care of it. If there's some weird, creepy crawly with 25 legs, I'm not going near it. I'll move. I'm leaving the house. I'm good. The house belongs to the bug. And that's just where people are different, because I know spiders are like a number one fear among people. They don't bother me at all. Not a problem. Why? I learned when I was a little kid they ate bugs. I learned when I was a little kid they killed bugs. So in my old apartment, not here, but in my old apartment, I had webs in almost every corner. I never bothered those spiders because I thought, you know what? They are going to make sure that there's a control on a bug population that could potentially come in through that wall or any wall. So there's no logic necessarily in what I do or don't like. So if people are looking to logically argue why I should like Game of Thrones, I'm not going to. And you'll notice, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, that there is some of these topics in there as well. But I also really enjoyed Goodfellas. Tell me how many of these things are in Goodfellas. So it depends on the movie, and it depends on the time, and it depends also on context. Context is big. So there you go. Before bedtime, I've done this. I'm going to upload it. And there you go. The 10 things that make me either turn a movie off or just not watch certain scenes. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I'll talk to you again soon.